Alrighty, so I'm doing this recording right after when the Orlando City versus Inter Miami game is finished, and even though there's only 25 minutes between the last game from match week number 34, which is Austin versus LA Galaxy, I'm still gonna do this review, and most likely I might miss the first 20 minutes of the game between Austin FC versus the LA Galaxy. But nevertheless, let us actually get into it, and certainly in terms of the story of this match week, well, weathers were definitely a big factor, especially in the Northeast, because there was a tropical storm that has happened. And while one game had pretty much everything gone on the offensive end, on the other one, not much really happened, and it kind of turned out to be maybe the most boring game of the season. But we start off with the first game, and the first one is Atlanta versus Montreal. And yeah, Atlanta, they clinched their playoff position. They're back in the playoffs. And again, in the Eastern Conference, as I mentioned before, it is definitely going to be a bloodbath this season, because there's going to be a lot of good teams that is going to be gunning for that Eastern Conference title. And while I talk about how the West is kind of unpredictable because no one is really consistent in terms so winning that Western Conference title. In the Eastern Conference, it's kind of the same thing, but that's because everybody is just too good. Like everybody seems like they have a shot to do so, and Atlanta kind of showed that in this game against Montreal. Now, early on, Yakimakis would hit one right to Siwas. Not much really happened early. There was only 1-0 in terms of the shots total for the first 15 minutes. Robinson would heads it high from the corner before the first shot for Montreal did see Lapinainen puts it high and wide from long range, but not long after that, Atlanta gets the lead. It's Silva scoring from Saba here to give Atlanta a 1-0 lead. There was a question whether or not if there was a potential offside here, and also whether or not if that one did cross the line there. It looked like Montreal maybe just cleared that one off the line, but in the end they said there was no offside and that the ball just crossed the line there. So yeah, Atlanta has a 1-0 lead. They didn't waste time to make it 2-0, as just 3 minutes later, Amada would score from Silver to make it 2-0 in favor of Atlanta. Opoku did try to get a response from Montreal, but he missed wide there. But they do get a response in the 40th minute, as Ahmed Hamdi would score a golazo from Lapinainen to cut the deficit in half. So just as you thought, maybe this is a game that Atlanta was going to run away. Montreal want to have something to say about in this one. But that being said, they didn't get all to a great start in the second half. In fact, they got off to the worst start possible, because in the 46th minute, Atlanta would make it 3-1 and restore that 2-goal lead. It's Yakimakis scoring here to make it 3-1 in favor of Atlanta. That's now 15 goal for Yakimakis, and I believe right now there's 4 players tied for 15 goals in terms of the Golden Boot race. So while we talk about the Eastern Conference and Western Conference standing being incredibly tight, same goes for the Golden Boot race. I mean, it is still anybody guess of who is gonna win the Golden Boot race this season. Now, originally this goal was disallowed for offside, because I think they thought that maybe oh god, I forgot which Atlanta player. I think it was Lennon, the one that looked like he poked that ball away from for Corbo, and he played for Yakimakis that was in an offside position. But on the replay, it looked like it was Corbo the one that actually gave the ball to Yakimakis, and in many ways, if that's the case, which was, yeah, that's a gift there from Atlanta. Just a terrible giveaway there for Montreal and for Kubo there. But yeah, that made it 3-1 in favor of Atlanta. The Post would then deny 0-4, and Montreal go back into this game. So despite the fact that when you look at the scoreline, there were chances that Montreal had to make this a little bit competitive and make this interesting. Though in the 63rd minute, Yakimakis looks for his second, but he puts it high from long range. And then Saba would miss wide from close, as Atlanta was definitely pressing for that fourth goal. Siwas would deny Saba from close range before on the other end, Ibrahim would hit one right to Guzan. Then we had a straight red for Joel Waterman after he commits a denied goal score opportunity, and that allowed Atlanta to get the fourth goal. As in the 88th minute, it's Mosquera scoring from Amada to make it 4-1 in favor of Atlanta, and that would be the final score of this game. Shots in this one, 17 shots compared to 11 that Montreal has, 8 shots on goal compared to 3 that Montreal has, 5 shots off target compared to 4 that Atlanta has, 5 shots out blocked compared to 3 that Montreal has, and possession-wise, 65% possession compared to 35% possession that Montreal has in this game. And like I said, with this win, Atlanta have clinched their playoffs position, but they definitely don't want to stop there. They definitely want to have some home field advantage. And like I said, the Eastern Conference table, just like the West, is very tight. The East is kind of tight in a way where pretty much, unless you're Cincinnati, between second all the way down to seven is really tight right now. And then you have the battle for those last two wild card spot between all those teams that are below the red line. Though again, if you kind of look at it in a way, it seems like it's a battle for one spot because for some might say that yeah, it's probably Miami going to be the one of those teams that is going to get one of those two wild card in the Eastern Conference. But looking at the teams that are most likely going to make the playoffs from seven and above, they're still fighting for a home field advantage, and knowing the fact that Atlanta has been very good in these last couple of games, especially when they're at home. I mean, this has been kind of the great soccer that we see Atlanta did a couple of years ago, and why Atlanta fans have really resist to say that they're truly back. But when you look at how they've been playing at home, it's hard not to say that they are truly back. Even though every time they say that, the next game it doesn't quite work well. But yeah, overall, I think Atlanta, they're definitely going to be a contender, definitely a team that people should be worried about in the playoffs. But for Montreal, again, they are one of those teams that is above the red line in that wild card spot right now. I think if you're in that spot, that's probably not a great spot to be considered. There's a lot of teams below them that are just hungry to take those spots, and with the way that Montreal has not played very well lately, yeah, things could go south for this Montreal team. But that being said, moving on in the next one, we got Cincinnati versus Charlotte. So yeah, this was probably one of those games where we don't usually see these kind of games often in MLS, despite the fact that when you have a matchup like this, you would think that Cincinnati can easily get the 3 points, and they did in this one. But still, this is MLS. Anything can happen. We have seen some big upset. This was not one of them. I mean, it was a convincing 3-0 win for Cincinnati over Charlotte, and it started early. Bupenza had a shot that was deflected off his own teammate and goes high, so that's kind of unfortunate there for Bupenza. But there was no doubt that Cincinnati was controlling the possession. They were pressing early for the lead. Costa then decided to go on his bike, but he missed that one wide before Kalina would deny Vasquez after just a bad turnover from Charlotte. That would be a theme for Charlotte in this game. They were just getting pinned back for parts of this game. But Bupenza then had a shot that was blocked off the line by Nathan Byrne before I wrote. The pressure seems like it's mounting. Like you can see Cincinnati, they were pounding on the door. It was a matter of time before they get the opening goal. Costa would then puts it high from long range, but then in the first minute of stoppage time, Cincinnati gets the opening goal. It's Barria that gets the opening goal for Cincinnati. Now Kalina, he was not happy about this. He thought that the referee didn't really blow the whistle before the free kick is taking quickly there, but I thought there was nothing wrong with that. I mean, I don't know why Kalina was angry about that. I mean, the wall was already kind of set up. It looks like they were ready to go, and Kalina just got completely caught there, and that in some way he kind of had no one to blame but himself there. But yeah, nevertheless, it was a 1-0 lead for Cincinnati. They'll take nothing away from Arvio Barrial. I mean, that was a great strike there to the top right corner. I think, if Kalina was ready, I think it would have been a difficult save for Kalina to make, but still, because he was not ready, it was pretty easy for him to find that top right in corner. So, yeah, that made it 1-0 in favor of Cincinnati heading into the second half. And in the second half, they waste no time to make it 2-0 as Bupenza would score from Acosta to make it 2-0 in favor of FC Cincinnati. I mean, Aaron Bupenza continued to score goals for this team. It's almost like they have not missed Brenner whatsoever, and that business that they done has been excellent. I mean, it's not very often you sell a player for a big amount of money and you replace a guy that is just as efficient as the last guy you saw, and so far Bupenza is definitely that guy. Then Dijigate had a rare Charlotte opportunity, but he blasted that one high before Vasquez would miss wide from close range. Bupenza looked for his second, but he hits one right to Kalina. And again, it just feels like it's one-way traffic. Like it was all Cincinnati in this one, and they pretty much put the icing on the cake in the 78th minute when Lucho Acosta decided to go Lionel Messi for a second there. I mean, he scored here from Wobodo. He basically took on the entire Charlotte defense, just cut them wide open, and then with a classy finish. I mean, definitely in contention for goal of the week. I mean, there was some great goals for this year, but this one is definitely one that I could definitely sense that this one could be winning the goal of the week and maybe even contention for goal of the year because of just such a great individual effort there from Lucho Acosta. And again, making his case why he could be the MVP this season. And again, I even said doing his Messi impression Cincy just completely cut open that Charlotte defense. Jones then puts it high on the header in the 81st minute before Ajiman would miss wide on the header as well. And again, Charlotte, it feels like they finally woke up, but again, a lot of that has to do with the fact that Cincinnati looked like they put their foot off the gas and was just trying to put it into cruise control to get the 3-0 win. Though Kalina did deny Baji and Cincy fourth goal, and yeah, in the end, it was a comfortable win for Cincinnati. 3-0 is the scoreline. The shots in this one, 20 shots compared to 9 that Charlotte had. 9 shots on goal compared to none that Charlotte had. So pretty much Cincinnati had just as much shot on goal in this one as Charlotte has in terms of shots total. But shots off target, 8 shots off target for the 6 that Charlotte has. Both teams had 3 shots that was blocked. This has to be wrong. There's no way in the world Charlotte had more of the possession than FC Cincinnati. I thought there were times that Cincinnati kind of dominated the possessions, but apparently on the app it says Charlotte had more of the possession, 60% possession compared to the 40% possession that Cincinnati has had. And like I said, there's really not much to add to this. It was just a dominant win for Cincinnati, and for Charlotte, they just got to move on. I mean, a lot of team has been coming out of TKL Stadium with a goose egg, and they just got to move on to a more bigger games that they're gonna get in the future that can still decide the playoff hope that they might have for the rest of the season. But that being said, moving on into the next one, and now we get to the Tropical Storm game because both of these games were played in a Tropical Storm. And if you would have told me out of both of these games, which game will be the more crazier game that has all the goals in, if you said this one, you are clearly lying. Because yeah, I mean, who would have thought a game between DC United versus the New York Red Bulls would turn into a goal fest? Consider both of these teams has had a lot of problem in terms of scoring this season, especially for the Red Bulls. Though early on, not much really happened in the Tropical Storm, though that quickly changes in the 13th minute when Harper had the game's first shot, but he missed wide there before Durkin would puts it high from long range. And in the 17th minute, Omir Fernandez would score from Harper to give the Red Bulls a 1-0 lead in this one. By the way, spoiler alert, the Red Bulls would eventually score 5 goals, which I think that is much goals that they've scored in the last 5 games. Like I swear, in the last 5 games, they have not been able to consistently put the ball into the back of net. So it was kind of surprised that they put in an explosion that we saw in this game. Though, that being said, I would like to say that this was also a game where defense, yeah, it feels like they were probably scared of the Tropical Storm because it was none to be found by both teams in this game too. Though they also mentioned that DC is 23 match winless when conceding the first goal. That will be 24 after this game. In the 19th minute, Cornell did deny Pines from long range, but then in the 21st minute, Benteke would score from click to make it 1-1 in this one. And what will definitely be forgotten in this game is that Benteke would have a huge night in this one, and we might actually have for the first time this season where a player can win the Player of the Week award despite the fact that he's on the losing side. And I'll tell you why that is the case in just a bit. But in the 25th minute, no penalty was given to the Red Bulls as VAR deemed that Canal's handball did outside the box. Penalty call would be a big theme in this one because there were a lot of penalty kick calls in this one. But this one, I do think that this is the right call. In fact, I think Canals actually handballed it twice in this one. He handballed it the first time outside the box, and then it looks like he handballed it again inside the box. But obviously, what they are going to look at is the first one because whatever happened after that is kind of null and voided. So yeah, the first one was clearly outside the box. No penalty was given. And on the ensuing free kick, Bono would deny token on there. There was also another shout for a handball for the Red Bulls for a handball not given. But then in the 35th minute, Benteke would take the lead for DC as he scored here to make it 2-1 in this one. There was another shout for a penalty for DC not given, and I thought the Red Bulls looked like they were rattled. I mean, it looked like DC, in a blink of an eye, has kind of turned this game on its head. But little do we know that, in this game, what happened after the 35th minute just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. This is when we really hit MLS mode, and would you say it's kind of MLS after dark in a tropical storm mode? Because yeah, buckle up, boys and girls. This is where this game just kind of completely doesn't make any sense. Because it started with a penalty given to the Red Bulls as Durkin brought down Token in the box, which Fernandez steps up to take the penalty. and he buries it to tie the game up at 2 apiece. And before we even had a chance to look at the penalty, that score from Fernandez, on the other end, a penalty was given to DC. So this time it was Reyes, the one that brought down Benteke in the box. So Benteke, of course, sitting on a hat trick here, taking the penalty, and he buries it. So he scored a hat trick in this one. And like I said, anytime when you score a hat trick in a match week, you're pretty much almost guaranteed to win the player of the week. And that this is why, a little spoiler alert, maybe this might be the first time we see a player win player of the week, but he's on the losing end of the resort. But yeah, he scored the hat trick in this one to make it 3-2. And just as you thought this game couldn't get any more crazier, just 3 minutes later, Harper would score from Token to tie the game up at 3 apiece. Set pieces would be a key story in this one, and not really in a good way for DC United. They were having a ton of problem in terms of dealing with set pieces, especially from the corner. And this is where I wrote, defending seems like they want no part of being in the storm because it was non-existing whatsoever. It was just a goal out in the last 10 minutes or so. And yeah, heading into halftime, somehow this game was tied up at 3 apiece, and this is by far the highest scoring game heading into the halftime whistle. Now in the second half, Barlow would had a shot that goes straight to Bono because, of course, if there's even one more crazy thing that can happen in this game, and that, of course, is Tom Barlow scoring. Though on the other end, Cornell would deny Perini from close range. It feels like this second half picked up where it left off in the first. It was just madness heading into the second as well. Though Bono did deny Duncan in the near post, but in the 59th minute, Red Bulls would retake the lead. It's Sean Nealis scoring from Token to make it 4-3 in favor of the Red Bulls, and once again, it came off of a set pieces. It came off of a corner, which has been a problem for DC in this game all night long, and it was happening once again in this one. Then Tolkien looked to try to score the fifth for the Red Bulls, but he blasts that one high before Benteke was looking for number 4, but he hits that one wide there. I mean, you might as well just say this is New York Red Bulls versus Benteke in this game. But in the 73rd minute, Cornell would deny Benteke from close range, and they mentioned DC have scored 15 goals in the last 15 minutes. That's the second most in MLS. I mean, DC has always known for some crazy games. I mean, I mentioned before how Atlanta has been known that. People forget that DC also are known to score some crazy goals late in this game. Though that was not the case in this one, because in the third minute of stoppage time, John Token says good night. He scored from Luquinez to make it 5-3 in favor of the Red Bulls. And yeah, in just a wild night that we saw in the nation's capital, and literally playing in a tropical storm in an Atlantic Cup. This one ended 5-3 in favor of the New York Red Bulls. I don't know how two teams that have been struggling to score goals just have an offensive implosion like what we saw in this game, but I guess the only explanation is it's MLS. Anything crazy things can happen. Just as you think that the script is written, then MLS decided to throw you something else, and that's what we got in this one, which is such a crazy game that we saw. Shots in this one, and there was a lot too. 20 shots committed, 15 that DC had. 7 shots on goal for the 8 that the Red Bulls had. 4 shots off target for the 6 that DC had. 8 shots that was blocked for the 2 that DC had, and possession-wise, 60% possession compared to the 40% possession that the New York Red Bulls has. But besides looking at out of the madness of this game, this was a massive win for the New York Red Bulls. And I've said this with NYCFC, it looked like they were back in it with them getting a couple wins. All of a sudden, with the Red Bulls getting a win in this one, they're now back it to a point where they're only 2 points below the red line. Again, it doesn't take much for things to change for those teams that below the red line, but it also doesn't think much in terms of change in terms of the team that is above the red line, because I think as we speak, DC is actually now below the red line because NYCFC did win to go above the red line. And yeah, again, it just the inconsistency for DC has been the case, and I think this game is kind of a microcosm of this season where they have shown some good moments in this one, and then they have shown the ugly heads of DC in this game as well. And that again, I do think that once again we're going to see DC, their hope in terms of making the playoffs could come down to the final day. And the last time that has happened, yeah, it didn't go so well for DC United, and it actually went well for the Red Bulls too. But yeah, this again, just crazy game that we saw in this one. But moving on into the other game that also play in a tropical storm. So again, if you would have said that, out of both of these games, which game would be the crazy game, which game would be the boring game, I don't think a lot of people would have said the rematch of MLS Cup between the Union and LAFC would be the case. But that's kind of what happened in this one. I mean, again, it was crazy how these two games were pretty much bipolar. Like this game was crazy. This game was a game where defense were pretty good in this one, but man, the attack was just absolutely dreadful and was pretty much non-existent for both of these teams. Though early on, Wagner did have the first shot of the game, which he blasted high on the free kick. And to tell you how bad the offense is, that would actually be one of just 6 shots that were counted in the stat line in this game. The Union, I thought they had most of the possession as LAFC was elected to sit back and counter, which is something that they have known to do on the road before. But I thought the Union had problem in the final third. Though again, that pretty much is the case for both teams in the final third. And I think maybe partially due to the element because I think they were playing into the win in the first half, which kind of didn't go in favor of them. Though Uru did had a shot that was deflected and goes onto the roof of the net before Crepeau did deny to Hariel on a little cross shot. At the end of the game, they actually didn't register that as a shots on goal. I cannot believe that was not registered as a shots on goal, which is again this kind of makes me wondering: is it true the fact that there was only 6 shots in this one? Because I feel like that probably should have counted as a shot on goal because Crepeau did have to make a save on that. But we do head to halftime, scoreless between both of these teams, and in the second half, once again the Union had a lot of the possession. But they actually put the ball into the back of net in the 50th minute when Gastek put the ball into the back net. The problem was they go to VAR to see whether or not if there was an offside on the development of play, and there was. So the goal was chopped off. It stays 0-0. But I thought LAFC continued to pin deep. I mean, I can see what they were trying to do in terms of springing out the transition, but they just couldn't do so because the Union is able to win the ball high up the pitch. And despite the fact that the Union did kind of play a risky game, I thought Jim Kern, this was kind of risky of him playing such a high line against an LAFC team that's known to do well in the transition. The Union, because of the fact that LAFC just could not get past that original high line. That's why the Union had a lot of possession in this one. Though that being said, 63 minutes in, because LAFC couldn't quite spring on the transition, they really didn't do anything on the attack too. They have still yet to register a shot 62 minutes, and this is where I started thinking, are they going to be joining the one of those elusive club, or I wouldn't say elusive club, but just kind of a low light club of being an MLS team to register or no shots for the entire game? I mean, the last time that has happened was RSL that did it against Seattle, and they had the undubious honor of registering zero shot not only past 90 minutes, but for 120 minutes, they didn't even register a single shot in the playoffs, and yet that team will definitely be remembered for a team that upset Seattle in the penalty kick shootout. But yeah, the shots were still 4-0 throughout for throughout into the 70th minute, and I thought we might be in for the record for the lowest total shot in an MLS game. I don't think they mentioned how what is the record for the lowest shot, but we probably was very close to that. Though the first shot for LAFC did came in the 73rd minute when Moreno heads it wide from the corner, and that was kind of it. I mean, there was really not much to say after that. It feels like both of these teams they want no part of playing in that winner again. And it feels like when they give the moment of the match after the game, they say that, yeah, the tropical storm gave the moment of the match because it was pretty clear that the tropical storm played a huge part to a point where, it was just an ugly game between both of these teams. But yeah, in the end, unsurprisingly, it ends in a scoreless draw. And again, the shots in this one, I'm not sure if it's completely correct, but yeah, there's only 6 shots, 4 shots compared to just 2 that LAFC had. There was no shots on goal, which is highly disputed because again, the grateful save that should have been counted as a shots on goal. But 3 shots off target for the one that LAFC had. Both team had 1 shot that was blocked, and possession wise, 62% possession compared to 38% possession that LAFC had. And again, normally I would say that this is definitely going to go down as one of those games where, it definitely did not live up to the hype, being a highly anticipated rematch of the MLS Cup last season. But that being said, I also would like to say that, with the weather that was in play, it definitely affected this game. I mean, I know there are going to be some that say, well, this game was not effective. There was a lot of goals that was scored. Yeah, this game was not effective because apparently both teams decided that they were just going to go gun ho. When it comes to the weather, and that the defense decided that yeah they're not even going to think about stopping it. That's not the case in this game between the Union and LAFC. I mean, both of these teams have very good defensive structure, unlike both of these teams that maybe they that wasn't kind of the case coming into that game. So yeah, again, in a game where I feel like if we didn't had this game playing the tropical storm, it definitely would have been more entertaining than what we saw in this game that is probably going to go down alongside with the Cascadia derby that we saw earlier this season between Seattle and Portland. It's probably the most boring game we've seen this season. With that being said, I am now going to switch boards and look at the last 4 games to finish off this review of part 1 of match week number 34. So remember I said that weather play a big part in terms of this match week? Well, it looks like the game between Austin and LA Galaxy is following the same suit, and that game is actually now under a weather delay. And yeah, so let's just hope that that game eventually would get going, because again, that game actually was a very late start. It's actually an 8:55 p.m. local start, and now it's going to get even later because of the lightning delay. But that being said, it is kind of a blessing in disguise because this does allow me to do the review of these remaining game as part of part 1 of the review for match week number 34. And we go into the next game between the Fire and the New England Revolution. And for the Fire, yeah, they have to win this game. They absolutely should have won this game against New England. Like, if they want to keep their faint playoff hope, that seems like it's gone away because of their typical collapse that they have in September. They had to win this game against a Revs team that was just kind of all out of sorts because of what has been going on with this team for the past couple of weeks. Though early on, Torres did heads it wide from close range before Herbert hits one right to Edward Jr. I'll tell you what, Earl Edward Jr., he has done a great job stepping in. I mean, this is definitely not an easy situation for him being the number one on this team after Georgi Petrovic made his exit, and that New England, of course, cash in on that Petrovic money. But I thought it was a strong start for Chicago, who, again, they desperately needed the win because of how things have been falling apart for them in the last couple of games. Edwards then denied Torres from close range before Shankale puts it just high from long range, as that was the Revs' first shot. In fact, the second shot of the game would be in the back of the net, and it would be that guy again, Thomas Shankale. I'll tell you what, he is known to score some bangers and has been scoring a lot of goals. Like, this is a guy that I have not heard of before, just a couple weeks since he made his debut, but he has definitely made a key contributor and really kind of a big surprise coming out of nowhere, making a key contributor on the goal scoring department. But yeah, he made it 1-0 in favor of New England, but unfortunately that lead barely lasts 90 seconds, because in the 18th minute, Gutierrez would score from Jonathan Dean to tie the game up at 1 apiece. It was an instant response for the Fire that they desperately needed, and they respond to that by pressing to get that lead here. Edwards then denied Kamara from close range before Doumbia struck the post and out there in the 28th minute. And again, it's all Chicago up to this point. But barring the 2 minute spell that New England has had, which to their credit, they took advantage of it because they score a goal. It was all Chicago in the first half. They were pressing to trying to get this lead. Kamara would then blast it high in the near post. Kai Kamara, he has not had a goal in the last 6 games. And again, I just wonder whether the record is starting to get into him. We saw this with Joseph Martinez, with how he was struggling to get that 100th of goal because it's kind of been on his mind. And the same goes for Kai Kamara too, chasing the record that Landon Donovan set, being the second of all time goal scorer. And even though that's not the first, because we know the goal king is still going to be Wando, but for Kai Kamara, that would be such an honor for him to pass Landon Donovan for that goal scoring mark all time in MLS history. And again, I just feel like maybe it started to get into him because of him not able to be clinical in front of goal. Though Gutierrez did hit one right to Edwards Jr., and we head to halftime with the score tied up at 1 apiece. But in the second half, Chicago finally got their deserved lead, as in the 54th minute, it's Jimenez scoring from Gutierrez to give the Fire a 2 1 lead. Again, I just feel like with Gutierrez playing as the lone 10, they just look so much better uh than when they have Shaqiri, or even both Gutierrez and Shaqiri on the pitch, which is again why when Shaqiri did get sent off in the last game, and maybe it was a blessing in disguise because, so far in the games where Ryan Gutierrez is starting as the lone 10, Chicago has been the better team. And again, for some that were thinking, well, why don't the Fire just put Gutierrez in there for every single game and maybe bench Shaqiri? Well, here's the problem. Shaqiri makes a lot of money, and it would not be a good look for the Fire if they decide to bench him. Plus, I'm pretty sure Shaqiri's not going to be happy about that too. So yeah, again, the Fire are kind of stuck in a bad situation, and that kind of continued in the 59th minute because out of nowhere, New England ties the game up. It's Carlos Gil scoring from Baroni to tie the game up at 2 apiece. It took a deflection and it goes in, and that just kind of sums up the luck for the Chicago Fire this season, and really for the past decade of this team. This team just have no luck whatsoever. They always tend to have one of these games where it feels like everything's going well for them, and then it just quickly turns because of bad luck, and in this case, a deflection that goes against them. Though Herberts did look to retake the lead for the Fire, but he blasts that one high, would then go for a long period of spell without much chances. You just kind of had a sense that this is when you saw how both of these teams would start getting fatigued. And by the way, we have saw some of these games late in where there wasn't really much action because, again, this is the third game in 7 days for a lot of these teams. So fatigue was definitely a factor for both of these teams. Though there was a really scary moment in the 86th minute for the Fire when Gutierrez, who looked like his foot got caught on the grass, and you just fear that it could be a dislocated leg. I mean, this has been a discussion that we've been talking about in MLS and even in the NFL too, with the way that, in the NFL, I think it's been making a big news talking about players that are dropping down like flies and having torn ACL because of playing on turf, and it's kind of the same situation we have in MLS with some of these stadium that is artificial turf, and that I don't think a lot of people have mentioned about the fact that it can still happen even when it's playing on natural grass. And yeah, again, you just hope that Gutierrez is okay and that's not a long-term injury. He did get subbed out in this one. There was also a check on that same sequence whether or not there was a potential penalty on that play, but VAR says no. I think that was the right call because it definitely, I mean, yes, Gutierrez did went down, but it just feels like he went down because he got caught. Uh, his foot got caught in the grass rather than a refs player make a bad challenge to give up the penalty for their team. But yeah, in the end, it ends in a 2-2 draw in this one, and the shots in this one: 16 shots for the 13 that New England has, 7 shots on goal for the 3 that New England has, 2 shots off target for the 5 that Chicago has, 4 shots that was blocked for the 8 that New England has, and possession-wise, 55% possession compared to the 45% possession that the Fire has in this game. And like I said, the Fire, they desperately need a win to end this miserable run that they've been on. They don't get it, and now it just feels like it's definitely slipping away, and it feels like it's a very Chicago Fire season once again, where they go on a hot run near the summer, and then the collapse kind of begin as soon as there's maybe hope that this is the year they finally make the playoffs for the first time since 2017. But for New England, they do clinch their playoff spot, but again, with what is going on right now with this team, it is really hard to imagine if they like. It would be just a great story if they do somehow how make a deep run, but looking how much of a bloodbath it is in the Eastern Conference, it's very hard to make a case that New England could survive that bloodbath, and it would maybe take a miracle for them to survive that bloodbath and make a deep playoff run. But that being said, moving on in the next match, we got Dallas and Columbus, which ended in a one draw in a game where, Columbus, I think, well, I would say that for both teams, maybe they'll be kicking themselves they didn't get all 3 points, mostly on Columbus cases because they had some big opportunity. And that guy called Cucho Hernandez, I mean, I know he didn't get on the score sheet in this game, but he is just red hot right now. He would first hit one right to pass in the 3rd minute before Tafari would clear the ball off the line, and he kind of had to make amends for that because it was him that gave the ball away to Rossi, and he again make amends of clearing the ball off the line there. But in the 16th minute, the first shot for Dallas saw Schulte denying O'Brien from point blank range. But then in the 23rd minute, Columbus would take the lead, and unfortunately, it's Tafari that gets the own goal here, and again, This is one of those one where when the ball is put in a dangerous area, you're a defender. That is like the worst case scenario for you because you're trying to play it out, but you might even put it into your own net, and that's exactly what happened with Kosi Tafari there. But Dallas does get a response in the 44th minute, and it's Obrian that gets the response from Fira to tie the game up at one apiece. I mean, Hunter Obrian, all of a sudden in the last couple of games, he's kind of started to find his finishing that's been really lacking for him really ever since he's from to FC Dallas a couple of years ago. So Cucho did look to respond, but he is denied by Paz in this one, and then Paz would deny Rossi from long range. Paz has to be on his game in this one, and in some way, Paz might have actually saved Dallas of getting a point out of this game. But Columbus was definitely pressing late to get the lead back, but we do head to halftime with this game tied up at one apiece. In the second half, Kucho would fire one right to pass before Fiera missed wide as he was in on goal there. The post would then deny Cucho and the lead again. So I think the difference in this game is that for this one, Cucho didn't really have the clinical finishing, and also the post wasn't kind for him because if he was like the last game where he went off in that game against Chicago, he probably would have got a hat trick easily in this game. Though Ariola would miss wide from close range in the 71st minute, there's been some great chances for both of these teams, but the question is, who's going to get the winning goal? Well, Cucho tried to do so in the 83rd minute, where he just curls it wide from close range, and in the end, nobody gets the winner, as it ends in a 1-1 draw in this game. The shots in this one, 13 fell for the 8 that Dallas had, 5 shots on goal compared to 2 that Dallas had, 5 shots off target compared to 2 that Dallas had, 3 shots that was blocked compared to 4 that Dallas had, and possession-wise, 53% possession compared to 47% possession that Dallas has in this game. I think with this draw, Dallas is now above the red line, which is good news for them, but the bad news is that they draw points at home, and they still don't look anything near decent going forward on the attack. They still struggle to score goals, and really, this is a game that they're very fortunate that their goalkeeper kind of comes up with a couple of big saves, and Cucho Hernandez kind of was a little bit off in terms of his finishing, because if he was on in terms of his finishing, or even at least can put one in the net, Columbus would have walked away with all 3 points in this game, but it was not meant to be, as again, both of these teams spoiled the point in this game. But moving on in the next match, Sporting KC. So this is a big response for Sporting KC against a red hot Houston team, and really a much needed response because after just a disastrous performance they had against Nashville, you just wonder for Sporting KC they need to respond in this one, and they did. But it was not easy whatsoever. In the first half, Clark would deny Tommy, but the ball actually popped in the air, and he just about cleared that one away. I mean, looked like it was going to trickle into the net, but Clark just did enough to clear that one away. In the sequence, they checked to see whether or not if there was a penalty potentially there as well, and there was or a penalty for a foul there in the box, which there was. So yeah, a penalty was given. Uh, it was deemed that, and I'm gonna absolutely butcher this name because I didn't actually get the pronunciation of this name, but I think it's Kowatsit. Handball that one in the box. So actually, I don't remember how I said there was a foul. There actually wasn't a foul. It was actually a handball that they were checking, and yeah, there was. So yeah, penalty for Sporting KC. Johnny Russell steps up and he buries the penalty. So that made it 1-0 in this one. Agata then tried to make it 2-0, but he puts an eye from long range, and it was all Sporting early. Like they looked like they were the better team, and you kind of had a sense that they had to because they are desperate to try to get 3 points, trying to get a good response after that disastrous game they had against Nashville on Wednesday. Magada would then blast it into the cauldron in the back post. There was a shout for a penalty once again for Sporting KC. This time it wasn't given. And then the post would deny Tommy and Sporting KC the second. And then on the other end, the post would be unkind to Houston as it denied Caicedo and Houston the equalizer. So yeah, the old saying goes: the post given, the post taken for the Houston Dynamo in this game. But I thought Sporting KC again. They got to be careful because as much as they have dominated this game, it was still 1-0, and Houston has that ability to climb back into the game and take advantage of those chances. And they look like they did in the 29th minute. Milia would deny Caicedo and Houston of the equalizer, and then in the 39th minute, it looked like things were gonna go go off the rails in a bad way for Sporting KC because Johnny Russell would get a straight red. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I thought this was harsh. I really do. I mean, yes, the studs were definitely showing when Russell basically brought down Quinones there in the box, but you just kind of had a sense that it feels like the force of it was mainly I mean, he did get the ball, and the ball kind of roll on the top of Quinones, which kind of made it look more worse than it looked. But apparently, VAR did not look at it that way, and they feel like because of the studs were showing there on that challenge, it was worthy of a red card. So yeah, Johnny Russell was sent off in this one, and again, this is where you just worry for Sporting KC because yeah, this is the last thing they needed with them hanging on to a fragile 1-0 lead. But in the 42nd minute, Clark would deny Agata as he was in on goal there. And again, give credit to Sporting KC. As much as I thought things were going to be bad, they were still having some good chances. They also mentioned there was going to be 12 minutes of stoppage time, which that was just kind of insane how much stoppage there was. I mean, yes, there were injuries and there was those two VAR look, but 12 minutes, yeah, that was kind of a little excessive. But during that 12 minutes, we do get goals because after Herrera pulls it wide from close range, against all odds, in the 5th minute of stoppage time, William Agata scores here to make it 2-1 in or 2-0 in favor of the Houston Dynamo. Kind of got ahead of myself there, but yeah, for William Agata, I thought he had a good game. He put in a really good shift in replace of Polito that was not available in this one. But in the 8th minute stoppage time, Houston got the response, and it's Teenage Hadabi scoring from Bartlow to make it a 1-goal game once again. What's kind of interesting about that goal was that both Hadabi and Bartlow kind of ran into each other, and somehow Teenage Hadabi still got that one off. Though they did actually check to see whether or not if Bartlow handballed that ball as that ball popped up in the air, and I gotta say it was very close. I mean, I wouldn't have been surprised if they would have disallowed that goal, but they didn't. It was back to a 1-goal game, and that the score is 2-1, and that will be the scoreline heading into the second half. And in the second half, I just feel like the momentum was with Houston. They were trying to get that equalizer, but again, give credit to Sporting. They did a really good job in terms of defending. And while it was kind of parking the bus, and they kind of gone on what I call row heave mode, they did a good job in terms of their shape. I mean, there's one thing to go row heave mode, and then there's also one thing if you actually defended well and put in a really solid defensive shape. And I also thought that maybe that's kind of where it kind of work against Houston, because Houston is not a team that is good at breaking teams down. They're a good team in terms of doing transition. So I think Peter Vermees realized that and say, well, why not we give the ball all to Houston and let them try to break down the trying to break us down, which has been a problem for Houston in this season. And it kind of showed because besides Melia denying Bear from close range, that was really the best chance that Houston has had for the rest of the game. In fact, Shari almost made it 3-1, but he pulls it wide from close range, and I just wonder, will that chance come back to haunt them? Because you kind of had a sense that even though they are very good defensively structured for Sporting K this season, this is game Sporting KC this season, they have shown that they have those laps of concentration, and this was one of them because in the 3rd minute stoppage time, Bear was in on goal there, but Tim Melia, how many times we have seen he has come up with a big save? He absolutely robbed Bear here in this moment. So yeah, in the end, Sporting KC, they hold on to a 2-1 win, and I forgot to put the shots total in this one, so I'm gonna quickly do that right now. Um, well, I'll just mention in terms of the shot total because actually let me see here. Let me see if they have the stats. Yeah, there it is. So there was 13 shots created, 11 that Houston has. There was 3 shots on goal created, 6 that Houston has. Shots attempt. I'm just looking on the ESPN website. It didn't show shots off target, but the possession-wise, Houston, of course, had more of the possession. But again, that was not a surprise because with the way that they were down to 10 men and they're trying to bunker in and trying to ask Houston to break them down, which is not a strength of the Houston Dynamo. It's not surprised that it kind of limited the chances the Dynamo had in this one. And that, yeah, in the end, Sporting KC, they got a big 3 points in this one. They're not above the playoff line yet, but they're definitely keeping in chase of that. But for the Houston Dynamo, they'll be disappointed that they didn't take advantage of their man advantage. But their focus is going to be on that U.S. Open Cup final game against Lionel Messi and his company in Inter Miami on Wednesday. That being said, moving on into the last game on the sport. So, well, Sporting KC, of course, get a much needed win in this one to help their playoff cases. What about Minnesota United? The answer is no. And honestly, I think that result, and I've said this in the review of that game between them and the LA Galaxy. I feel like that resort clearly broke this team, and that resort might be the resort, and well, actually, I wouldn't say that is the resort, but maybe the Sporting KC resort that we saw against Minnesota might be the resort sort of them starting to go through a meltdown once again in the month of September. We saw this happen last season too when they went into a collapse and barely made it to the playoffs on the final day, and now it seems like it's happening once again. And like I said before, they could not afford to have this collapse again because where they were in the standings, if they had that collapse, they're not going to make the playoffs. And it feels like it's on its way to look like that once again. And that again, unlike last season, it feels like no playoffs. It is bound to happen, and that it would end that playoff streak in terms of them making the playoffs every year since 2019. Now, early on, Shroud would pose it wide from close range before Berkey denied some bin from close range. No Reynoso in this game, which when I found out that, I knew that this was going to be an uphill battle because you know how important Reynoso is to this team, and without him, I mean, some bin he did try his best to to create some of that, but again, how many times I've said that he's not really the good in terms of playing in that Reynoso role, and it kind of showed in this game too. Though that being said, I thought both of these teams were getting some good early chances, despite the inclement weather. Did I mention this game? There was some weather, rain that has happened. There was no lightning in this one. I thought there was probably gonna be a lightning delay, despite the fact that when I look at the weather report in the Twin City, there were a huge there was a huge chance that this game would have been delayed either at the kickoff or during the game, but no, there was no delay throughout this game. The Lightning kind of stay away from the stadium. But Pookie did hit one right to Berkey, and I thought the Loons were on the front foot, and it makes sense because they need to get a win after what happened on Wednesday. Bin then missed wide from close range, and that's when I knew, oh, looks like it's one of those nights. Again, I can always tell whenever this team started missing chances, I can have a feeling that, yep, it's one of those nights for this Loons team that they just cannot finish, and they cannot afford to have that in this one. Consider you kind of had a said feeling this is almost a must needed win or must win territory in this game against St. Louis, despite the fact that St. Louis is at the top of the standings. And keep in mind, St. Louis, they didn't even play their strongest team in this game until the second half. Though Dane Sinclair did deny Pompeo, but it fall to Ostrak, who puts it over the bar. Longwane then puts it wide from close range. The opening goal doesn't seem like it's far from now because it seems like both of these teams were getting some good chances. Trapp would then puts it wide from long range before Stroud would hit one right to Dane Sinclair, and we do head to halftime with this game scoreless between both of these teams. It wouldn't stay scoreless for long because coming out of the break, a penalty was given to Minnesota, and this season Berkey has been incredible, and I think he's definitely going to be in contention for goalkeeper of the year, especially with the way that Petrovic. I don't think he's going to be no longer valid in terms of winning the award now that he's no longer with New England. But yeah, this was a rare mistake here where he dropped the ball here, and that he had to bring down Dotson as Dotson was trying to tap it into the empty net, and that allowed Timu Puki to take the spot kick because Reynoso was not available in this one. And I'll tell you what, it wasn't really a good penalty from Puki, but I think it just had enough pace to beat Berkey there. But yeah, that gave Minnesota a 1-0 lead. Sunbin then headed onto the roof of the net in the 50th minute before Vasilev looked for a response, but he missed wide from close range. Dotson then hits one right to Berkey. As I thought St. Louis, they started to bring on the cavalry. So this is where I think if you're Bradley Carnell, you kind of had a sense that maybe there's still a chance that they can get something out of this game. And knowing Minnesota has been a team that hasn't done well in terms of keeping leads, there's a chance that the 3 points are still up for grabs, let alone 1 point. Bin then pulls it wide from close range, and this is where I thought the Loons got to get the second goal soon because knowing the caliber that the St. Louis team has, they had the ability to tie the game up. Jackson would then hits one right to Dane St. Clair. I was thinking that Azel Jackson was going to score a goal in this one because I've seen this before where former Loons player go to somewhere else and they come back to haunt us because of scoring a goal against us. I thought Jackson was going to do so, and although he didn't score a goal in this one, he did get on the assist chart in this one. Though it wasn't for the equalizing goal because in the 64th minute, guess who? It's Santa Claus. He scored here from Nowinski to make it 1-1 in this one. I mean, I feel like that should be his nickname by now. I mean, I know his real name is Shell Claus, but I always will noted him as the Santa Claus man because yeah, he scored here and again just classic Joe Claus. They're just towering over the defender there. I mean, he is a guy that has a very good aerial ability, and yeah, with him able to outjump DJ Taylor, which is not a big surprise because DJ Taylor has had a lot of problem this season defending and also attacking at the same time. So it was unsurprising that Klaus was able to outjump him and dink that over. So yeah, that game tied it at one apiece. He almost got a second one if it wasn't for Dane Sinclair denying him there. And I just thought, yep, here we go again. It looked like the meltdown is going to happen. I mean, I wouldn't say this was as big of a meltdown as the one against the Galaxy, but I just had a sense that Minnesota was going to blow this. It looked like it that they're going to blow this lead that they had and end up losing the game, and that looked like it was a reality in the 73rd minute when Bloom would score from Jackson to make it 2-1 in favor of St. Louis. And if you would have told me coming into this game which South African most likely would score a goal in this one, I wouldn't think Bloom would be the guy that would score the goal. You would think Longwane would be the South African to score it, but Longwane, countryman, Bloom was the one that scores the goal. And again, Azel Jackson on the assist chart in this game. And it definitely is a contention for goal of the week because that was a good curling effort there from Bloom there. And yeah, that gives St. Louis a 2-1 lead. Pookie then puts it high from close range before Jackson puts it over the bar from long range in the 82nd minute. And really, as the time winds down, I kind of start to see that this team really got tired out. Again, the fatigue factor is definitely the case for a lot of these teams playing 3 games in 7 days, but it's more on this Minnesota team because they didn't really rotate throughout these 3 games in 7 days. And I think the fans kind of realized too, because yeah, despite the fact that this is still a 1 goal game, anything could happen late, as we have seen in MLS before. It doesn't feel like the fans were having it, or maybe the fact that it was just raining and it was cold and they just want to make the exit. Which again, normally I know people would say that that's kind of insane to see, but I don't blame them whatsoever. I mean, it's that if you have seen this team day in and day out, like I have seen them, I don't blame for those fans are leaving because I know this team is most likely not going to make that comeback. No, they almost did so in the first man of stoppage time when Dotson tried to do his trademark banger goal. Didn't happen. He missed wide there. And then in the 5th minute stoppage time, it almost was like a repeat against New England. This time, it actually was Nowinski, the one that almost scored an own goal. This actually came off of a Route 1 ball from Dane Sinclair, which is why I said this looks like it was a repeat because it looks like Dane Sinclair was going to be on the assist chart, though. It's not going to be credited because it would have been an own goal. But yeah, Nowinski, he almost scored an own goal in this one, but he can thank the goal scorer winner in this one, Bloom, for saving his day because he kind of accidentally deflected that one also, and it goes wide. If he did not deflect that one, that was going to be an own goal for Jake Nowinski. So yeah, not only Bloom scoring the winning goal, but kind of saved his teammate in the end there. As in the end, St. Louis, they're in the playoffs. They become the first Western Conference team to clinch a playoff position. They're now tied with LAFC for the most win in an expansion season, and I mean they're going to break that record obviously, as they win 2-1 in a come from behind win against Minnesota. And the shots in this one, 18 shots for the 16 that St. Louis had, 6 shots on goal for the 5 that Minnesota has, 10 shots off target for the 7 that St. Louis had. Both teams had 3 shots that was blocked, and possession-wise, 56% possession compared to the 44% possession that St. Louis has in this game, and it just feels like it's getting away from Minnesota in this season, and it's such a shame too because it's been a strong season, and that when you look at this team, they should not be underachieving this badly. But I really think the story of this season, well, there's a couple of story of this season. The story of this season is the fact that despite all the talent that they had, just have nobody is able to be a clinical finisher. And also Adrian Heath, how many times when he tried to do rogue Heath mode and not doing a good job in terms so reacting to substitution or tactical changes from the other team, and it comes back to burn him. And this is where again, this is the Heath out brigade is going to be in full force, and I don't blame them for being in full force right now because again, I feel like the pendulum is now tipping toward the Heath out, and Adrian Heath potentially need to be fired of this team because of the recent performance that this team has been put. But that being said, I am now gonna say that that is pretty much the end of this video, and that we are going to finish up the review of the remaining game because there's still one game that is going on. In fact, I don't know if that game between Austin and the Galaxy is going on right now, or did they kicked off? Because last time I checked, it was still under a delay, but. Either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys do like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.